Margaret, why don't you head to the kitchen and give the caterers a hand? You'd feel right at home with the help. My future son-in-law said this at my daughter's engagement party in front of 63 guests at the Granite Club in Toronto. Then he chuckled, swirling his scotch like he'd just told the funniest joke in the world. I'm 67 years old. I've been cleaning homes across the Greater Toronto area for 43 years. I've mopped marble floors in Rosedale mansions, where people like Nathaniel Ashford-Whitfield never once bothered to learn my name. I raised a remarkable daughter who became a cardiologist at Toronto General Hospital, worked double shifts at Tim Hortons to put her through medical school, and never once asked me for a dollar I couldn't spare. But nothing, and I mean nothing in 43 years of being invisible, prepared me for the moment my daughter's fiancé looked at me like I was dog muck on the sole of his handmade Oxfords. Let me start from the beginning. My name is Margaret Doucette. My husband Gerald and I left Cape Breton in 1982 with 2 suitcases, $400 cash, and the kind of hope only young fools carry. Gerald started shoveling driveways in North York for $5 a pop. I started cleaning houses in Forest Hill, scrubbing baseboards on my hands and knees while my employers pretended I was furniture. We worked 16-hour days, 6 days a week, for 34 winters. We built something quiet. I'll come back to that. 4 months before this nightmare, my daughter Claire phoned me in tears of joy. "Mum," he asked. Nathaniel proposed at the cottage in Muskoka. I heard the sunshine in her voice, the tremble of a woman who believed she'd found her forever. My Claire Bear, my brilliant girl who'd graduated top of her class at McMaster, was engaged. I cried too. What mother wouldn't? Gerald popped a bottle of the good Niagara ice wine we'd been saving for something worth celebrating. Nathaniel Ashford-Whitfield, 38, was a senior partner at one of those Bay Street law firms where the floors are polished so bright you can see yourself in them. Harvard undergrad, Osgood Hall Law. His mother, Vivienne Ashford-Whitfield, chaired 3 charity boards, wintered in Palm Beach, and wore her pearls like a suit of armor. The first time Claire brought Nathaniel to our small bungalow in Scarborough, he shook Gerald's hand and then, I swear on my late mother's grave, wiped his palm on his trousers when he thought no one was watching. Gerald saw it. I saw it. We said nothing. Claire was radiant. The engagement was 4 months of little cuts. Vivienne never once called me by my first name. It was always Claire's mother or simply she. When Claire showed her prospective wedding venue options, Vivienne sighed and said, "Darling, I'm sure your parents' friends would be more comfortable at something casual. Perhaps a barn venue up near Collingwood?" When we went for afternoon tea at the King Edward Hotel, Vivienne suggested I might prefer something lighter than the full-service, dear. The sandwiches can be quite rich for those not accustomed. I swallowed every bite of it. For Claire. Because she loved him. Because I kept telling myself, maybe this is just how old Toronto money speaks. Maybe I'm too thin-skinned. Maybe I need to try harder to fit in. The engagement party was at the Granite Club on Bayview Avenue. Of course, Vivienne insisted. "It's where the Ashford-Whitfield engagements have always been celebrated," she said, as if that ended the conversation. The dress code was black tie. I bought a dress from Simon's, navy with a bit of beading on the shoulders. Not expensive, but dignified. Gerald wore the one good suit we'd bought for Claire's medical school white coat ceremony. We felt nervous but proud. Our only child was marrying into what everyone insisted was a good family. We arrived 15 minutes early. The ballroom took my breath away. Crystal chandeliers the size of small cars, ivory linens, centerpieces overflowing with white peonies and Canadian winter greenery. I found the place cards at the entrance. Gerald and I were assigned to table 11, at the very back, near the swinging door to the service hall. Nathaniel's parents were at table 1 with Claire, his law partners at table 2. His rowing club friends from Upper Canada College at table 3. My sister Denise, who'd driven in from Halifax, was placed at table 10. We were the furthest from the front the geography of that room allowed. "Mum," Claire found us, glowing in a blush-colored gown. "You look stunning." "You're the stunning one, love." I hugged her tight and smelled her hair, the same Pantene she'd used since she was 14. "Where would you like us to sit?" "I'm moving you both to table 1. You should be beside me." "Claire, sweetheart, table 11 is fine." "No, Mum. It's not fine." She snatched our place cards and marched toward the front of the room. From across the ballroom, I watched Nathaniel intercept her. They spoke in clipped whispers, his jaw tight. She shook her head. He grabbed her forearm, not hard enough to bruise but firm enough to matter. She pulled away. Then Vivienne glided over in a cloud of Chanel No. 5 and platinum waves. She said something to Claire that I couldn't hear. Claire's face drained of color. Vivienne patted her shoulder the way a person pats a dog and walked away. Claire came back to us, place cards still crumpled in her fist, her eyes shining. "Table 11 is lovely, Mom, really. Claire Bear, what did they say to you? Please, let's just have a nice evening." The speeches began. Nathaniel's father, Preston, told a long story about Nathaniel winning a sailing regatta on Georgian Bay when he was 12. Vivienne gave a toast about the importance of continuity, of maintaining the standards our families have upheld for generations. Nobody mentioned Gerald. Nobody mentioned me. Nobody mentioned that Claire had worked nights at Tim Hortons through her undergrad. Nobody mentioned the Governor General's academic medal she'd won. It was as though my daughter had sprouted fully formed from a maple tree at the age of 26, with no parents, no history, no cost. Then came the moment that broke the world in half. The main course arrived, Alberta beef tenderloin. I was cutting a small bite, trying hard to be invisible, when I heard my name drift across the room. In a ballroom with that kind of acoustics, voices carry in strange ways, especially when the speakers feel too confident to lower them. "Margaret and Gerald, at table 1? Are you joking?" Vivienne's voice. I looked up. She was standing by the bar with Nathaniel, both of them half turned away, half laughing. "She made a fuss about the seating chart," Nathaniel said, in that drawl some men learn at boarding school, like every word is borrowed from a British film, as if it matters where they sit. "They ought to be grateful they're even on the guest list." "Considering?" Vivienne asked. "Considering her mother scrubs toilets in Rosedale for a living." And then he laughed. Not a small, embarrassed laugh. A real laugh, the kind that says I've got an audience and I'm going to enjoy this. "Mum," he added, "I did tell Claire we ought to have had a small civil ceremony at the courthouse and been done with it. This has been exhausting. Vivienne's next words are the ones I'll carry to my grave. Well, we certainly can't seat them at the family table. Can you imagine the Mackenzies asking what Margaret does for a living? My mother-in-law mops hallways. Oh, Nathaniel, that would play beautifully at the firm's holiday party." They laughed together, mother and son, like it was a bit they'd rehearsed. My face went hot. Gerald reached under the table and found my hand. His fingers were shaking, something they hadn't done since the oncologist gave me the all-clear in 2019. "We should go, Maggie," he whispered. "No, not yet. For Claire." But Claire had come out of the washroom. She was standing frozen near the bar, 5 paces behind them. She'd heard every syllable. I saw it happen on her face. I saw my baby's heart break in real time. She walked straight to Nathaniel. She said something low and sharp. He rolled his eyes and muttered something back. She raised her voice. Heads started turning. That's when Nathaniel made the mistake that ended him. He raised his own voice, right there in that marble-floored room, in front of 63 guests, and he pointed toward the kitchen doors. "Margaret, why don't you head to the kitchen and give the caterers a hand? You'd feel right at home with the help." And he chuckled. The room went silent. I mean, every fork, every whisper, every breath. 63 Toronto blue bloods frozen with champagne flutes halfway to their mouths. Vivienne actually laughed, a tinkling, rehearsed little sound. "Oh, Nathaniel, you're positively awful." But she was smiling. Gerald began to rise. Claire's face went white, then red, then white again. "I'm 67. I've been looked through. I've been talked over. I've been tipped like a stranger in houses where I knew the children's birthdays and the dog's medication schedule. But I had never, not once in 43 years, been mocked in front of my own daughter." I stood up slowly. I placed my napkin beside my plate with both hands, the way my mother taught me in our farmhouse kitchen in Sydney Mines 50 years ago. I looked Nathaniel Ashford-Whitfield dead in the eye. "No." He actually blinked. "Pardon?" "No. I won't be going to the kitchen, Nathaniel. I'm not the help here. I'm your fiancé's mother. I was invited. I'm a guest at my daughter's engagement party." "Well, technically, you were included as a courtesy." "Mum," Claire was at my elbow, her hand on mine. "We're leaving." "Claire, don't be absurd." Vivienne stood up, her pearls clicking. "Your mother is making a scene." Nathaniel was joking. He wasn't joking. Claire's voice shook, but she didn't drop her eyes. I heard you both at the bar. I heard every word. Nathaniel's face went the color of old cheese. Claire, darling, we were just... You called my mother a toilet scrubber. Claire's voice was carrying now, and she let it. You said you were embarrassed of her. Of him. She looked at Gerald, whose shoulders were shaking. Of the two people who worked themselves to the bone so I could sit in a lecture hall at McMaster and not worry about rent. Claire, lower your voice. Vivienne hissed. No. Claire pulled off her engagement ring. 3 carats, emerald cut, a family ring Vivienne had bestowed with great ceremony. I won't lower my voice. I won't sit quietly while you humiliate the 2 best people I've ever known. And I certainly won't marry a man who thinks my mother isn't good enough to eat at the same table as him. She set the ring down on the white tablecloth. The small clink of platinum on porcelain was the loudest sound I've ever heard. You're being hysterical, Nathaniel said, and reached for her arm. Don't touch me. She stepped back. Then she turned and looked at that whole room, at all those expensive, powerful people watching the show. My mother cleaned houses during the day and worked nights at Tim Hortons for 21 years to pay for my education. My father plowed driveways at 4 in the morning in blizzards you wouldn't step outside for. They never missed a single parent-teacher night. Not one. They showed up at every hospital rotation review I had, and they sat in the parking lot afterward with Timbits because they didn't want to intrude on the dinner the chief of medicine was taking me to. That is more love than you have ever shown me, Nathaniel. You don't love me. You love what I look like on paper. Respectable wife, reasonable pedigree, useful for the partnership vote. Claire, you're throwing away. I'm throwing away nothing. She grabbed my hand, then Gerald's. Come on, Mum. Dad, we're going home. We walked out of the Granite Club with our heads high. Behind us the room erupted, Vivienne shrieking about embarrassment, Nathaniel shouting Claire's name. We kept walking. In the parking lot, beside our old Honda CR-V, Claire collapsed against the passenger door and sobbed. I'm so sorry, Mum. I should have stopped this months ago. I saw how they treated you. I told myself I was imagining it. Claire Bear, no. I wanted to believe he loved me enough to grow into a better man. I wanted it so badly. You defended us tonight, Gerald said, wrapping his arms around her. When it counted, you stood up. That's what matters. We drove back to Scarborough with Claire in the back seat, her head against the window. We made tea. She slept in her childhood bedroom, the one with the constellation stickers still on the ceiling from when she was 9, while Gerald and I sat at the kitchen table drinking Red Rose at midnight. She did the right thing, Gerald said. I know, I just ache for her. The next morning, Nathaniel called Claire's phone 26 times. She blocked him. Then Vivienne called our landline, which nobody used anymore except telemarketers. I happened to answer. This is your fault. Her voice was frost. Good morning, Vivienne. You raised her to be an ingrate. To not recognize an opportunity when it's handed to her on a silver plate. She recognizes plenty, I said. She recognizes respect, which your son hasn't learned yet. Nathaniel can have any woman in this city. Claire ought to be on her knees begging. Claire isn't begging anyone for anything. I raised her better than that. Self-respect. Vivienne laughed. Is that what you call throwing away an Ashford-Whitfield? Do you have any idea what our family has built? Yes, Vivienne. I know exactly what your family has built. Goodbye. I hung up. For the next 2 weeks, Nathaniel tried everything. Flowers delivered to Claire's condo. A letter on firm letterhead. He showed up at Toronto General and tried to pull her aside between consults until hospital security escorted him out. Then he threatened to sue Claire for half the engagement party deposit. She told him to file whatever he liked. Then his managing partner called her himself. Dr. Doucette, this is Andrew Fitzgerald from Pemberton Ashford LLP. I represent Nathaniel in a personal capacity. He's prepared to offer you a settlement if you'll sign a non-disclosure. Mr. Fitzgerald, I'm not interested. Please, if I might. He'd forgo any claim regarding wedding expenses if you'd agree not to discuss the events of the evening publicly. We understand you have a video recording from the bar area. Claire had in fact taken out her phone in the washroom when she came out and heard them. She'd recorded every word. I recorded his mother at the bar saying my mother ought to be grateful to have been invited to my own engagement party, yes. A long silence. Perhaps we could meet, Dr. Doucette. No. She hung up. 3 weeks after the party, Claire came over on a Sunday afternoon. She was wearing jeans and her old McMaster hoodie. I made tourtière the way my mother taught me. Halfway through dinner, Claire set down her fork. "Mum, can I ask you something?" "Of course, love." "Your cleaning business. Doucette Home Services. It's bigger than I've always thought, isn't it?" I looked at Gerald across the table. He nodded slowly. We'd never lied to her. We'd simply never made a fuss. We drove a 2017 Honda. We kept the bungalow. We took our vacations at the same cabin on the Bras-d'Or Lakes we'd rented for 30 years. We'd wanted Claire to build her own life on her own strength, not to grow up thinking a safety net was coming. "How much bigger, Mum?" "Sit tight, Claire Bear." I poured more tea. I started Doucette Home Services in 1987 out of our kitchen. One woman, one bucket, a used Ford Tempo I bought from a scrap dealer for $800. I cleaned houses in Rosedale, Forest Hill, Lawrence Park. I was on time. I was thorough. I remembered the names of every child and every dog. Word spread in a community that trusted word of mouth above all else. By 1998, I had 12 employees. By 2005, 48. Around then, Gerald sold his snow removal routes and came into the business full-time. We pivoted. We moved into commercial and institutional cleaning, office towers, medical buildings, private schools, long-term care homes. By 2015, we had 310 employees across the Greater Toronto Area, Hamilton, and Ottawa. "Mum, how many do you have now?" 640. Claire's teacup paused halfway to her mouth. 640? 49 medical office buildings, 23 private schools, 61 commercial towers, including the Commerce Court Tower on Bay. Commerce Court. Yes, where Pemberton Ashford has its offices. We've had the contract for 9 years, $18 million total, running through to 2027. Claire stared at me. "Does Nathaniel know?" "No one at that firm knows. We're a corporation. Gerald's listed as the managing director. I'm the founder, but I don't appear on marketing. We don't do any. We get business by reputation." So when Nathaniel was joking about toilet scrubbers, our overnight crew was cleaning his office. Every single night for 9 years. After he went home to his condo in Yorkville, Claire started to laugh. Then she started to cry. Then she laughed again. "Oh my God. Oh my God, Mum." "There's more," Gerald said quietly. Claire looked at him. "The Granite Club," Gerald said. "We have the exclusive custodial and grounds maintenance contract. Have for 14 years. 31 million over that period." Claire's face went through 4 emotions in as many seconds. Shock, disbelief, something hard and glittering that almost frightened me, and then something soft and sad. "Does Vivienne know?" "No. Like I said, we don't advertise. The Granite Club board knows, but members never ask who owns the cleaning company. They see our staff in their khakis, and they look through them the way people always have." So when Vivienne was saying, "What would the Mackenzies think if they knew Margaret cleans for a living?" "The checks that fund that club's operations," I said, "clear my bank every month." Claire stood up, walked to the kitchen window, turned around. "Why didn't you ever tell me?" "Because money changes how people see themselves. We didn't want you chasing grades because you thought you had to. We wanted you to work hard, because that's who we raised you to be. But I could have used this. I could have thrown it in Nathaniel's face." I shook my head. "That's not who we are, Claire. We don't wave money around. We don't use it to make other people feel small. That's what the Vivienne Ashford-Whitfields of the world do." "But they made you feel small, Mum. They did that for months. And we're not going to become them because of it." Claire sat back down. "So what do we do now?" "Nothing," Gerald said. "You dodged a bullet. Nathaniel showed you exactly who he is, and he did it before you signed a marriage certificate. That's a gift. Take it." But as it happened, things were already moving without us. 3 days later, the phone rang. It was the managing partner, Andrew Fitzgerald, calling me directly this time. "Mrs. Doucette, I apologize for the intrusion." "How can I help you, Mr. Fitzgerald?" "I'm calling about our custodial contract with Doucette Home Services. We have only very recently learned that you are, in fact, the founder of Doucette Home Services." "That's correct." Long pause. "Mrs. Doucette, I want to apologize on behalf of the firm. If you had known what, Mr. Fitzgerald?" That you shouldn't let a senior partner of yours ridicule a working woman in public? Or that you shouldn't let him get caught? Another long pause. I deserve that. What I can tell you is this. Your contract with Pemberton Ashford will not be affected by anything personal. You run an outstanding operation and our people value it. That's the first thing. The second thing is that Nathaniel Ashford-Whitfield is no longer with our firm as of 8 o'clock this morning. I sat down at the kitchen table. Excuse me? Several of our senior partners were made aware of what happened at the Granite Club. The recording was shared, I understand, by a guest at the event who was appalled. It reached our managing committee. We had a vote last night. Mrs. Doucette, our firm's overnight cleaning staff has been treated by our lawyers with professionalism and courtesy for 9 years because we insist on it. The idea that one of our partners would stand in a ballroom and speak to a woman of your standing, or frankly any woman at all, the way he did, is incompatible with what we tell our clients about our culture. Thank you, Mr. Fitzgerald. I'm also calling to let you know that the Board of Governors at the Granite Club is requesting a meeting with you on Friday, if you're available. My stomach clenched. They want to cancel our contract. Mrs. Doucette, they absolutely do not. Friday came. Gerald put on his one good suit. I wore a gray wool blazer I'd had for a decade. We drove up Bayview Avenue and walked through the front doors of the Granite Club, the same doors I'd walked through 2 weeks earlier to have my life's work mocked in front of 63 people. The board chair, Eleanor Harrington, met us personally in the lobby. Mrs. Doucette, Mr. Doucette, thank you for coming, please. In the boardroom, 11 members of the governance committee stood when we entered. I'd never had 11 people stand for me in my life. I'll be direct, Eleanor said once we'd sat. We've learned what transpired at the Ashford-Whitfield engagement party. Several members spoke to us. We've also reviewed the venue's security camera footage with audio. What Mr. Ashford-Whitfield said to you is unacceptable. What Mrs. Ashford-Whitfield found amusing is also unacceptable. I appreciate that. We're revoking Vivienne Ashford-Whitfield's membership, effective immediately. We're also suspending Preston Ashford-Whitfield pending his own review, given his silence in the aftermath. I don't want her punished. Mrs. Doucette, this is not about punishment. This is a private club with a 300-person staff, some of whom have worked here for 30 years. If we permit a member to treat anyone, a guest, a staff member, a supplier, with public contempt, we send a message to every employee we have that they are expendable. We will not send that message. Not on my board. Gerald squeezed my hand so hard my knuckles cracked. Additionally, Eleanor continued, we'd like to extend and expand your contract, $42 million over the next 12 years, inclusive of our new wellness pavilion coming online in 2027. And we'd like to feature Doucette Home Services in our next member quarterly. Your story. How you and your husband came down from Cape Breton with nothing and built one of the most respected service companies in Ontario. We think our members ought to know whose hands keep their club standing. I couldn't speak. Gerald spoke for me. We'd be honored. 6 months later, on a Saturday in October, with the maples still lit up in reds and golds, Claire had her first coffee with Dr. Ravi Subramanian, a pediatric oncologist at Sick Kids. They'd met in the hospital cafeteria when she accidentally sat at his table. On their first proper date, he drove up to Scarborough to pick her up. He shook Gerald's hand with both of his. He hugged me. He asked what I did. When I said I ran a cleaning company, his face lit up. My mother cleaned offices at Bell Canada for 22 years to put my sister and me through school. She'd love to meet you. 18 months after that, Ravi and Claire were married on the back lawn of our Scarborough bungalow. 48 guests. Ravi's parents flew in from Winnipeg. His mother, Asha, helped me make butter tarts the night before, standing at my kitchen counter in an apron I'd had since 1993. His father, a retired city bus driver, spent the afternoon with Gerald in the garden, comparing notes on tomato varieties. There was no country club. There was no seating chart. There was just a tent we rented from a Scarborough wedding rental place, and folding tables, and a playlist Claire had put together with Stompin' Tom Connors and Gordon Lightfoot on it. When I walked Claire down the aisle on the grass I'd pushed her stroller across 30 years earlier, I thought my heart might burst. I'm 67 years old. I cleaned houses on my hands and knees for 20 years. I built a company now valued at $73 million. But none of that is the point. The point is this. I raised a daughter who knows her own worth. who, when the moment came, chose her family over a ring. Nathaniel Ashford-Whitfield, last I heard, is at a small litigation firm in Mississauga. He'll never make partner on Bay Street again. Vivienne resigned her other 2 board chairs after the Granite Club news made the society pages. Preston divorced her quietly last spring. I don't take pleasure in any of that. I honestly don't. And me, I still clean one house every Tuesday. A 91-year-old widow named Dorothy in Forest Hill, who's been my client since 1994 and who asks every week about Claire, and whose husband used to slip a $20 bill into my coat pocket at Christmas, even when we said not to. I clean her house because that work is part of who I am, and I will not let anyone, not Vivienne, not Nathaniel, not any of them, make me feel small about the hands that built my life. I won't forget Nathaniel's face when he told me to go to the kitchen. I won't forget Vivienne's little laugh, because the truth that neither of them will ever understand is this. I wasn't beneath them that night. I never was. I was standing on 43 years of honest work, and they were standing on someone else's money, and I think, somewhere under all those pearls and all that scotch, they knew it. That's why they laughed so loudly. They were trying to drown it out.